The Big Story.
George? George, are you awake?
What's the matter? What's the matter?
The light's still on over at Mrs. Fromer's.
Oh, so what?
So what? I suppose you think it's all right for a lady to entertain a gentleman in her home until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, for Pete's sake, will you go to bed?
The Big Story. Here is America. Its sound and its fury, its joy and its sorrow, as faithfully reported by the men and women of the great American newspapers. Seattle, Washington. The story as it actually happened. The Stuart Whitehouse story as he lived it.
For you, Stuart Whitehouse of the West Seattle Herald, life can be frustrating, and most of the time it is. The reason? Your paper is a weekly. Every time you run into a good story, you have to wait days, sometimes a full week, before you can print it. The big Seattle dailies carry it the next day, and that kills your yarn and kills you inside. So much for the background, and now for the beginning. It's this cold January night, and you stop in at the Boulevard Cafe for two things. First, a beer, and second, for some idle talk with Mike Mahaney, the bartender.
Mike, who's the lady at the other end of the bar?
Her name's Fromer. Lorraine Fromer. Why?
She's pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, she's got class. Comes in here almost every night, all alone. Has a few drinks, plays the same number on the jukebox over and over. You can see she's lonesome.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Don't look at me, Mike. All I want is a beer, a kind word, and I'm going right home. I haven't got any ideas on the subject.
Well, you're the first guy I met around here who hasn't. Every customer who comes into the joint tries to date her.
You sound as though you had a personal interest yourself.
Me? Are you kidding? I got a wife and a family at home. Anyway, I'm the bartender. She's a customer.
Sure, I know. I'll be seeing you, Mike.
Yeah. So long, Stu.
The impression is zero. An incident that lives a little and dies. Something to forget, never file. But a few nights later, in the same bar...
You know what, Mike?
What?
I think you're cute.
Me?
Yeah, a lot cuter than some of the creeps that come in here. Or that husband of mine.
Oh, speaking of the guys who come in here, Mrs. Fromer, you ought to be careful who you let buy you a drink. Some of these characters have been taking you home, kind of weird.
What's the matter, Mike? Jealous?
Me? Jealous? You kidding?
I wonder, darling. I wonder.
Look, I'm just trying to be a nice guy. Just warning you that some of these barflies are dangerous.
Forget it, Lochinvar. Give me another drink and stop playing daddy. Little Lorraine can take care of herself. Mike.
Yeah?
Give me another drink.
Look, haven't you had enough?
I'll let you know, Daddy, when I... Well, look who's coming. Little Howie DeSalle. The poor man's Houdini.
Hiya, Mike.
Hello, Howie.
Hiya, Lorraine.
How's the amateur magician?
Amateur, huh? Well, don't you kid yourself, sweetheart. I'm playing 2 benefits next week, and I'm going to be great someday. Great, you get me?
Oh, that's a laugh. Why, you couldn't pull a rabbit out of a rabbit hutch.
Hey, let me tell you something. I can do every trick the pros can, see? Coin tricks, handkerchief stuff, vanishing watches, dice, and card gimmicks. Well, I got a barrel of... Hey, Mike, have you seen my latest card trick?
I'm busy now, Howie. I got customers to wait on.
Lorraine?
Yeah?
Can I take you home tonight?
Go away, little man.
Oh, look, Lorraine, I think you're swell. Why do you give me the brush off every night?
You bore me, Howie.
Will you let other guys take you home?
They're men, Howie, not two-bit Casanovas like you. Now, why don't you disappear, screwball?
Hey, now, look, baby, you can't talk to me like that. Why, I ought to...
Ought to what, buddy?
Hey, wait a minute. Who are you? What are you shoving in here for?
This guy annoying you, lady?
Why, yeah. As a matter of fact, he is.
Beat it, punk.
Hey, wait a minute. Take your hands off me.
Ram, before I turn you inside out, go on, shove off.
Okay.
Mind if I sit down?
I don't mind.
Buy you a drink?
Thanks.
What's your name, baby?
Lorraine. What's yours?
Smith. Fred Smith.
What do you do?
Me? I play beautiful music. Say, you got any plans for the rest of the evening?
Oh, nothing in particular.
Maybe I could take you home.
Maybe.
You, Stuart Whitehouse of the West Seattle Herald, learned later that the time was about midnight. And in a house on West Kenyon Street...
Margaret,
Yes, George?
what are you peeking through the curtains for?
Just saw Mrs. Fromer come in next door with a gentleman. Now, I'm not one to snoop, George, but
But you just like to know what all your neighbors are doing.
Mind your tongue, George. I just happen to think it's not right and proper for a woman to entertain a gentleman in the middle of the night.
Oh, you women. I don't figure to understand you as long as... Hello?
Mr. Poole, I'm sorry if I've disturbed you.
It's all right, we're still up. Who is this?
My name's Albert Koenig. I'm just a friend of Mrs. Fromer's.
Oh?
I've been trying to get her on the phone, and there hasn't been any answer. I was worried maybe something was wrong.
No, nothing's wrong. She's been out, that's all. She just came in with a gentleman.
A man, eh?
That's right.
I see. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Poole. Sorry I disturbed you. Night.
Good night.
Who on earth was that, George?
No one you'd be interested in. Now, why don't you go to bed? I want to get some sleep.
George, are you awake?
What's the matter? What's the matter?
The light's still on over at Mrs. Fromer's.
Oh, so what?
So what? I suppose you think it's all right for a lady to entertain a gentleman in her home until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, for Pete's sake, will you go to bed?
George, that came from next door.
Must be Mrs. Fromer. Margaret, I'm going over.
Don't you dare, George Poole. Don't you dare leave me alone. You get on that phone and call the police.
You're working late in the office, Stu Whitehouse. The deadline for the Herald happens to be the next afternoon. You clean up all the odds and ends. Finally, shortly after 3 a.m., you get in your car and head for home. And almost automatically, you turn on the police frequency on your special dashboard radio.
Car 3-2. Car 3-2. Proceed at once to 3930 Kenyon Street. 3930 Kenyon Street. Disturbance reported by neighbor, possible homicide. Lieutenant Cotter speaking, will follow.
It's Lieutenant Jonas Cotter of West Seattle Homicide. Apparently, he took over the sergeant's chore at the police radio for a few minutes. But the point is, you happen to be on Canyon Street, very close to the address mentioned. You step on the gas, get there in 1 minute flat.
Hold on, mister. Who are you?
My name's Whitehouse, the Herald. What's going on here?
Oh, I don't know. My name's Poole. I live next door. I heard a scream and I phoned the police. I was out here waiting for them when you...
Who lives in there?
A woman named Fromer.
You haven't been in the house yet?
Yeah, no.
Okay, what are we waiting for? Let's go in.
Well, look, mister, there may be a killer in there.
Yeah, there may be. But there's only one way to find out. Let's go.
You're no hero, but this, for a change, is a story. A story you've actually got a chance to score a beat on. Your deadline's the next afternoon. Maybe you can break it before the big Seattle dailies. Anyway, you and George Poole climb in through a window. You stand there for a moment, listening.
You hear anything, Poole?
No, not a thing.
Okay. Turn on the lights.
There's nothing here.
What's that next room?
Parlor.
Let's go. Poole. Look.
It's Mrs. Fromer. And she's been... Good Lord.
You, Stuart Whitehouse of the West Seattle Herald, and the neighbor, George Poole, stare down at the body lying on the floor. It's the same auburn-haired beauty you saw on the Boulevard Cafe. The woman Mike, the bartender, had pointed out as Lorraine. And around her neck is a cord, wound so tight that it's embedded in the flesh. A strong, thin, very peculiar-looking cord. Lieutenant Jonas Cotter and a squad arrive. And a few minutes later...
Ever see a strangling cord like this, Jonas?
No, can't say that I have, Stu.
Well, look at it. It's smooth and waxed. And that tight weave with flecks of red woven into its fibers. There's something about this special cord that bothers me, but I just can't put my finger on it.
Well, I don't know much about the cord, Stu, but I'll tell you this much. This particular killer wore a size 9 shoe.
How do you know that?
Found his footprint in the mud outside the house. Did a rough measure.
I see. Jonas, listen. If we can find the man whose shoe fits that print by 2 p.m., I've got a chance to get a beat on every daily in Seattle.
Now, take it easy, Stu. What do you want? Miracles? Come on, let's look up this man who made the call at midnight. This Albert Koenig.
Shock to me, a great shock. You see, Lieutenant, I've known Lorraine a long time. You might say I'm a friend of the family.
I see. What about that phone call in the middle of the night, Koenig? Why'd you make it?
Oh, that. Well, you see, ever since her marriage broke up, Lorraine's been nervous, distraught, and lonely. I got in the habit of phoning every night, just to see if she was all right. But now that I think of it...
Now that you think of what?
Well, after Mr. Poole told me Lorraine had come home with a gentleman friend, I was disturbed. Well, anyway, on an impulse, I drove over to her house. I guess it must have been about 12:30. Well, when I got there, the lights were on, but the shades drawn. I went up to the door and...
Who is it? Who's there?
It's I, Albert.
What do you want?
Lorraine, I've been worried about you. Are you all right?
Oh, sure I'm all right.
Let me in for a moment.
Go away.
Is anyone else in there with you?
No.
Then why won't you let me in?
Please go away, Albert. Please let me alone. Don't ask any more questions. Just go away.
And that's what happened, gentlemen. That's precisely what happened.
That's very interesting. Very. You tell me something, Koenig.
Yes, Lieutenant?
What size shoe do you wear?
Size 9. Why?
Jonas Cotter calls in his experts to match a cast of Koenig's shoe against the print found in the mud. But now the clock shows 11, and it's 3 hours the deadline. You, Stu Whitehouse of the West Seattle Herald, can't wait. You have a lead in your own mind, a starting point. You go to the Boulevard Cafe and see the bartender, Mike Mahaney.
Well, what do you know? What do you know? I wonder who did it.
I thought you might have some idea.
Yeah? Why should I have any idea?
Mike, listen. Was Lorraine Fromer in here last night?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, she was.
With whom?
Huh? Some big gorilla.
You know his name?
I wouldn't know. But he was a real mean crumb bun if I ever saw one.
Now, look, was there anyone else in here who might know him?
Well, yeah, a screwball named Howie DeSalle. An amateur magician who hangs around here. This big gorilla tossed Howie around a little, and... Well, maybe Howie could tell you more.
Where can I find this Howie DeSalle?
Stick around for a half hour. Usually comes in about then for a pick-me-up.
You say this gorilla took Lorraine home, Howie?
Oh, where else? They went out together. This is what she got, the poor kid.
Mm-hmm.
He was a big guy. She couldn't have had a chance.
Get his name?
Smith, I heard him say. Fred Smith.
Smith, sounds like a phony.
Phony. I'll say he was.
Howie, listen. I'll try to remember. Did he say anything else that might give me a hint as to who he was?
Well, all he said was that he played beautiful music. And that's a funny thing to say, ain't it?
That could mean anything. A wisecrack, an idiom. But just on a hunch, you call the Musicians Union, and there is a Fred Smith, a banjo player. You don't know much about music, but you suddenly think of that thin cord wound around Lorraine Fromer's neck. You drop in to see this Fred Smith at his apartment.
Sure, I took her home, so what? I don't know a thing about any murder, White House.
What time did you leave her?
Oh, about 1 o'clock.
You sure?
I told you, 1 o'clock.
Uh-huh. Where'd you go after that?
Well, some after-hours joint in Tacoma. We had a jam session there. I didn't leave till 5 a.m., and I can prove it.
Tell me one thing, Smith.
Yeah?
What kind of strings do you use on a banjo?
Why?
Just curious.
We use steel, naturally. Take a look for yourself.
You take a look. Every string is steel. You take another look. This time at his feet. They're at least size 11, maybe 12. Now you look at your watch. 1 hour to deadline, and you see that dream of a big beat on the dailies grow very dim indeed. And so, back to headquarters.
What about Albert Koenig, Jonas? He said he wore a size 9 shoe.
Yeah, we took a cast of his foot. Only it doesn't match that footprint in the mud.
What about Lorraine Fromer's husband?
I checked on him, Stu. He's a foreman at a logging camp up at Three Lakes, and he's got an airtight alibi. Yesterday was payday. He played cards half the night.
All we've got is this piece of fancy cord.
That's all. I still don't figure what it would be used for. The lab's checking it now.
Maybe it's a special wrapping cord. You know, the kind they use in department stores.
Yeah, it could be, but I doubt it.
So do I. But I've got an hour to kill before deadline. I might as well try one of the big stores and check it. Mr. Lennox, you buy all the wrapping supplies, paper, cord, and so forth for the store, don't you?
Yes, that's right, Mr. Whitehouse.
You ever see any string like this?
No, can't say that I have. One thing sure is not wrapping cord. Wait a minute. Come to think of it, I have seen a twist like this.
Yeah, where?
I recall our novelties buyer showing it to me. He thought I'd be interested in a new kind of cord.
Yeah, but
that cord belongs to a special kind of yo-yo.
A yo-yo?
Yes, that's right. A special kind, rigged up for magicians to do certain tricks.
Magicians? Mr. Lennox, what time is it?
It's 1:30. Exactly 1:30.
You race to a phone booth, call Mike Mahaney at the Boulevard Cafe, get Howie DeSalle's address. After that, you call Jonas Carter at headquarters. And now you've got 20 minutes before the Herald goes to press. 10 minutes later, you're in Howie DeSalle's rooming house.
Well, have you found this Fred Smith yet, Whitehouse?
Yeah, we found him, Howie. Only we're sure he isn't the killer.
Well, if he ain't, who is?
We don't know yet.
And what is this? Why did you come up to see me all of a sudden?
Well, I'll tell you what, Howie. When Mike Mahaney told me you were a magician, I got an idea.
What kind of idea?
Well, I figured on running a special feature in the Herald on magicians. I'd get some dope on it and take your picture, and you'd be in for a little publicity.
Hey, that's a great idea. Me, the great DeSalle in the Herald.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I like that. Well, what do you want to know?
Well, I don't know. Props, maybe. What do you use for your routines?
Oh, I got them all right here in the closet. Here, I'll show you. And I got silk effects for knots, ties, and flourishes, 10 different kinds of magic card decks, rubber lemons and eggs, sponge golf balls, feather flowers. I got them all.
Ever do a yo-yo trick?
Oh, you're kidding? Sure, let me show you. I got one right here on the shelf, you see. Now, we'll just... Wait a minute. And what do you know? There's no string on it.
That's too bad, Howie. Yeah, maybe this one will fit.
Where did you get that?
It came from around Lorraine Fromer's neck. Just where you left it, Howie.
The police come in, and you turn Howie over to Lieutenant Cotter. Then you phone in your story just to make the addition, score your beat. And that's all there is. That's your story. Except for what Howie DeSalle had to say later.
And she treated me like dirt, see? She made fun of my magic. She was always going out with other guys, but never with me. Anyway, after this big gorilla Smith took her home, I had a few drinks, and I guess I got pretty sore.
So you went to her house?
Yes, Lieutenant. I waited till Smith left, and then I pushed my way in. I tried to be real friendly, honest I did, but she wouldn't have any part of me. And then this other guy came to the door, and I squeezed her arm, and I made her send him away.
After that?
Well, after that, I showed her all my tricks and everything. I wanted to show her that I was going to be bigger than Thurston or Keller or Cardini someday. I thought maybe she'd be nicer to me, maybe even like me. I thought she'd think I was wonderful. Let me take her home sometime, but she just sat there, getting smaller and smaller, and her eyes bigger and kind of scared, like she thought I was crazy or something. Me, one of the best, crazy. And all of a sudden she tried to make a run for it, and I grabbed her, and she started to fight, and I guess I must have gone wild. Well, what else can I say? You know the rest.
Now we read you that telegram from Stuart Whitehouse of the West Seattle Herald.
Killer in tonight's big story went to trial for murder in Superior Court. Prosecutor asked only for a first-degree conviction, leaving decision of life and death to the jury. Jury brought in verdict of second-degree murder, and Killer was sentenced to serve 20 years in the state penitentiary at Walla Walla.
In order to protect the names of people actually involved in tonight's authentic big story, the names of all characters in the dramatization were changed with the exception of the newspaper reporter.
The Big Story has been a presentation of the United States Armed Forces Radio Service.